My name is Sarah, and I never thought I'd be the one to bring down a corporate giant from a glass-walled boardroom in London's Canary Wharf. Growing up in a cramped Manchester flat, where my mum worked double shifts at a textile factory to keep the lights on, I learned early that survival meant reading the room, knowing when to speak, when to listen, and when to fight. My grandfather, a South African immigrant who'd left Cape Town's bustling markets for a grey English sky, used to tell me stories of traders outwitting bigger players with nothing but grit and timing. His voice, thick with Afrikaans, stuck with me, so I taught myself the language as a teenager, poring over phrasebooks late at night to feel closer to him after he was gone. That's how I ended up here, staring down a $200 million deal, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I'd been with Tech Trend Innovations for nearly a decade, clawing my way up from a junior analyst to lead strategist on their biggest project yet, a logistics and AI integration deal with NextGen Logistics, a South African firm looking to expand into Europe. The stakes were massive. If this deal collapsed, Tech Trend's European ambitions would crumble like a sandcastle at high tide. I'd spent a year building trust with NextGen COO, Thandai Makona, a woman whose quiet intensity reminded me of my mum on her toughest days. Thandai had grown up in a Johannesburg township, turning raw determination into a corner office. She didn't care for flash. She valued precision, respect, and people who did their homework. I'd learned to speak her language, literally and figuratively, using Afrikaans to bridge cultural gaps and letting silences linger until she filled them. That morning, we sat in Tech Trend's sleek London office, the Thames glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows. 12 next-gen executives lined the mahogany table, their tailored suits sharp against the city's haze. Thandai stirred her rooibos tea, her eyes locked on me as I outlined the deal's local autonomy clause in crisp Afrikaans. "We understand your need for regional control," I said, my voice steady despite the sweat prickling my neck. "This clause ensures your teams in Johannesburg and Cape Town retain decision-making power." Thandai's deputy nodded faintly, a rare sign of approval. I could feel the room tilting in our favor, the deal inching closer to a handshake. Then the door swung open, and Sebastian strode in, reeking of overpriced cologne and Boston bravado. Late, as usual, by a good 15 minutes. Sebastian was Tech Trend's new VP, a transplant from some Silicon Valley startup who thought volume equaled authority. He'd grown up with a silver spoon, gliding through Ivy League halls and boardrooms on his family's name. His blue eyes sparkled with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. "Morning, team," he boomed, flashing a grin like he was hosting a TED Talk. "Let's take this deal to the stars, yeah?" He winked at Thandai, who didn't even glance his way. Her spoon paused mid-stir, a flicker of disdain crossing her face. I kept my focus on Thandai, ignoring Sebastian's entrance. I'd dealt with men like him before, guys who saw my northern accent and working-class roots as a reason to underestimate me. But I'd earned my seat at this table, not just with degrees, but with late nights studying NextGen's supply chain, learning their culture, their priorities. I knew Thandai's team valued respect over theatrics, and I'd spent months proving I understood that. Sebastian, though, was a bulldozer in a bespoke suit. He slid into the chair beside me, leaning in too close. "Sarah, you're killing it with the cultural stuff," he whispered, loud enough for half the room to hear. "But let's talk strategy now. My lane." My pen twitched in my hand, but I kept my face neutral. "As we've discussed," I continued in Afrikaans, addressing Thandai, "the autonomy clause aligns with your long-term goals." She nodded, her eyes steady, but Sebastian cut in again, switching to English. "Let's pivot on that autonomy point. Feels like we're giving away the farm here." A rustle of fabric rippled through the room. One of NextGen's attorneys adjusted his tie, his brow furrowing. Thandai's spoon clinked against her cup, a sound sharper than it should have been. I inhaled slowly, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and Sebastian's cologne. This wasn't just a misstep, it was a landmine. I turned to Thandai, slipping back into Afrikaans. "Let me clarify the context for our guests," I said, my voice calm but firm. A few NextGen executives relaxed, one even offering a small smile. Sebastian, oblivious, leaned closer. Sarah, you're great at the translation bit, but strategy's above your pay grade now. My grip tightened on my pen, the plastic creaking. I'd seen his type my whole career, men who thought my role was to smile and translate while they played king. But I'd built this deal, word by word, pause by pause, over a year of late-night emails and transatlantic calls. And now, Sebastian was about to torch it. The room felt like it was holding its breath, the silence heavy as Thandai's team watched Sebastian with the kind of stillness you'd see in a predator sizing up prey. My heart hammered, but I kept my eyes on Thandai, her face unreadable except for the faintest tightening around her mouth. I'd spent a year earning her trust, learning how to navigate her world. Not just the language, but the unspoken rules of respect and patience that her team valued. Sebastian, though, was a wrecking ball, and he was about to swing again. Let's reframe this autonomy clause, he said, his voice loud enough to echo off the glass walls. We've got leverage here, folks. No need to bend over backward. A next-gen deputy blinked rapidly, like he was trying to process the arrogance. Thandai's spoon stilled completely, her eyes flicking to me for a fraction of a second. I could feel the deal slipping, like sand through my fingers, and the weight of it pressed against my chest. This wasn't just a contract. It was my life's work, proof I'd risen above the Manchester Council estate where kids like me were expected to stay small. I spoke again in Afrikaans, my voice low and deliberate. As we've agreed, the autonomy clause ensures your operational freedom, which is critical for your expansion into Europe. Thandai nodded, almost imperceptibly, but Sebastian wasn't done. He clapped his hands, the sound jarring in the quiet room. Look, Sarah's done a great job as our cultural liaison, but I'm taking point now. Big picture stuff. My pen snapped in my hand, the crack loud in my ears. I hadn't even realized how tightly I'd been gripping it. Thandai cleared her throat, pulling every eye to her. We were under the impression, she said in slow, deliberate English, that Sarah was leading this engagement. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it, honed from years of navigating boardrooms that underestimated her. Sebastian grinned, unfazed. She was, he said, leaning back in his chair. But as of today, we're pivoting. Strategic restructuring. Sarah's role's been sunset. He said it like he was announcing a weather forecast, casual and cruel. The word sunset hit me like a slap. Not fired, not let go, sunset, like I was some outdated software. The room froze. Thandai's deputy paused mid-sip, his coffee cup hovering. Another executive adjusted his glasses, his mouth twitching like he wasn't sure whether to laugh or protest. My ears rang, but my face stayed blank. Not because I was calm, but because I'd learned long ago to hide my hurt. Growing up, I'd watched my mum swallow insults from bosses who thought she was just a factory drone. I'd promised myself I'd never let anyone see me break. Sebastian adjusted his cufflink, smirking like he'd just won a poker game. Shall we proceed? He asked, clearly expecting me to translate his nonsense. I didn't. Instead, I looked at Thandai and said in Afrikaans, I apologize for this unexpected shift. A brief recess may help us align expectations. Thandai's eyes met mine, sharp and assessing. Wise, she said, standing. Her team followed, leaving their folders untouched. Sebastian beamed, clueless, thinking he'd regained control. As I gathered my notes, my jaw tight, I felt the air shift, like a storm brewing. 3 weeks earlier, my cousin, a lawyer in London, had tipped me off about a rival firm's interest. They're impressed with your work, she'd said over coffee in Shoreditch. Ever think of going solo? I'd laughed it off, loyal to tech trend despite its politics. But now, Sebastian's stunt had lit a fuse. I hadn't told anyone, not my cousin, not my best friend, but I'd already sketched out an exit plan, a consultancy, lean and quiet, built on the trust I'd earned. Standing there, I knew it was time to act. The meeting resumed after a tense break, and we were barely into the revised integration clause, one I'd crafted after weeks of late-night calls with NextGen's legal team, when Sebastian stood up, his chair screeching against the floor. Sarah won't be continuing with Tech Trend, he announced, loud and clear. Her position's been sunset, effective immediately. The room went deathly quiet. Thandai's teapot hovered mid-pour, her eyes narrowing. A next-gen attorney blinked 3 times, like he was decoding a bad joke. My blood ran cold, but I didn't flinch. I'd faced worse. Teachers who said I'd never leave Manchester. Bosses who assumed I was just a diversity hire. I looked at Sebastian, his smirk faltering for a split second. "Step outside," I said, my voice even. He chuckled, leaning back. "No need, Sarah. Transparency's best, right?" I saw it then. The twitch in his jaw, the glee of someone who'd planned this to humiliate me, to show Thandai's team who was boss. He thought I was a pawn he could knock off the board. I stood slowly, my chair barely scraping the floor. "I see," I said, turning to Thandai. In Afrikaans, I added, "My apologies for this disruption. This was unexpected and may raise concerns for your team." Thandai didn't respond, but her gaze held mine, not with pity but with curiosity, like she was watching a chess match and I'd just made an unexpected move. Sebastian clapped again, oblivious. "Let's stay on track. We've got a deal to close." Thandai raised a hand, silencing the room. In Afrikaans, she said, "Sarah, what is your next role?" The air shifted, and Sebastian's brow furrowed. He didn't understand the words, but he knew he'd lost the room. I felt a calm settle over me, like the quiet after a storm. "I haven't decided," I said in Afrikaans, my voice steady. "But I'm open to new partnerships." Thandai's deputies exchanged glances. Sebastian tried to interrupt. "We'll translate later, let's focus." But Thandai stood, addressing her team in Afrikaans. "Break," she said, and they filed out, leaving Sebastian floundering. As they left, Sebastian turned to me, his voice low. "You should have seen this coming, Sarah. Overpaid, overhyped." I looked at him. Not angry, just clear. "You just fired the only person who speaks their language, built their trust, and wrote this deal." I paused, letting it sink in. All to prove a point. His smirk wavered. I leaned in. "I had an offer 3 weeks ago, Sebastian. I turned it down. I'm reconsidering now." His eyes widened, but I was already walking out, my heels clicking on the polished floor, each step a promise to myself. The London air felt sharper as I stepped out of Tektrend's office, the Thames reflecting a gray sky that matched my mood. Sebastian's stunt had been a gut punch, but it also lit a fire I hadn't felt since I was a kid, sneaking into libraries to read books my teachers said were too advanced for me. Back then, my mom would slip me a tenner from her factory wages for a bus ticket to the city center, whispering, "Show them what you're made of." Now, standing on the pavement, I knew it was time to do just that. 3 weeks earlier, over coffee with my cousin in a Shoreditch cafe, she'd mentioned a rival firm, Apex Dynamics, reaching out. "They want someone with your skills," she'd said, her lawyer's eyes glinting. "No bureaucracy, just results." I'd brushed it off, loyal to Tektrend despite its growing chaos. But Sebastian's betrayal changed everything. That night, in my small Hackney flat, I opened my laptop and drafted a business plan. Horizon Strategies, I called it lean, discreet, built on the trust I'd earned with clients like NextGen. I registered it in Singapore for its privacy laws, using a P.O. box and a minimalist website. Precision in global markets, quiet by design. The next morning, I called Thandai Makona. We met in a quiet Mayfair tea room, away from Tektrend's prying eyes. "I'm sorry for yesterday," I said in Afrikaans, stirring my rooibos. Sebastian's move was unprofessional. Thandai's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. "It was disrespectful. To you and to us." She leaned forward. "What's your plan, Sarah?" I told her about Horizon Strategies, my vision to consult independently, focusing on cultural fluency and strategic precision. "The deal you want is still on the table," I said, sliding a revised proposal across the table. "Same terms, but I'm independent now. 10% success fee upon signing." Thandai's mouth twitched, not a smile, but recognition. "You had this ready?" she asked. I nodded. "I've been prepared." We spent an hour refining the deal, discussing NextGen's European expansion and how my firm could navigate their regional partnerships. She shook my hand as we left, her grip steady. "This is how business should be," she said. By the next day, NextGen signed with Horizon Strategies, my first client. Back at TechTrend, Sebastian was unraveling. I heard through a former colleague that he'd held emergency calls with clients, mispronouncing names and pitching vague promises. He hired a new strategist, Laura Hensley, from the Paris office, who spoke fluent Spanish but stumbled over basic Afrikaans. NextGen ignored her emails. Other clients, German, Dutch, Australian, started going quiet, missing meetings, delaying signatures. Sebastian thought it was a blip. I knew it was a tide turning. I didn't poach clients. I didn't need to. I sent a German logistics firm a white paper I'd written on AI integration, addressing a gap TechTrend had ignored. A Dutch startup got a polite note in English, mentioning Horizon Strategies' availability for market entry. My cousin reviewed every move, ensuring my contracts were ironclad. She'd grown up with me in Manchester, watching our mum struggle, and her legal mind was as sharp as her loyalty. "You're not breaking rules," she said over wine one evening. "You're playing a game they forgot to finish." Thandai introduced me to NextGen's regional partners, and I worked from a co-working space in Soho, using encrypted calls and burner emails to stay under the radar. Every time I passed a TechTrend billboard on the tube, boasting seamless futures, I smiled, not out of spite, but because I was building something better. A French client emailed, saying they missed my clarity. An Australian firm asked for a consult. Horizon Strategies grew, not with fanfare, but with quiet deals, each one a brick in my new foundation. Sebastian's panic surfaced in a leaked Slack message, forwarded by a sympathetic ex-colleague. "We need to lock this down," he'd written, demanding HR find my non-compete. There wasn't one. 6 weeks before my firing, I'd requested a contract audit from HR, citing confusion over my title change under Sebastian's vision. They'd promised a follow-up, but never did. I'd saved every email, every Slack ping, including one from Sebastian. "I'll handle Sarah's exit. No need for legal." His arrogance was my shield. By the time TechTrend realized their mistake, I was in Johannesburg, meeting NextGen's legal team to finalize our deal. Thandai joined us, her presence grounding. "You remind me of my younger self," she said privately, her voice soft. No one handed me anything either. Her township roots mirrored my own, and that shared grit made our partnership more than a contract. It was a bond. As we redlined terms, I felt my grandfather's stories in my bones, his tales of outsmarting bigger players in Cape Town's markets. I was doing the same, one deal at a time. TechTrend's glass tower in Canary Wharf felt like a distant memory as I sat in a Johannesburg cafe, redlining NextGen's expansion agreement. The city hummed outside, a mix of car horns and street vendors, reminding me of my grandfather's stories about Cape Town's energy. My phone buzzed with a Financial Times article forwarded by my cousin. TechTrend faces client exodus amid leadership shakeup. Natalie Price, a journalist I'd met at a London conference, had been digging into TechTrend's mismanagement. I declined to speak months ago, still loyal then. Now I was ready. The article was careful, citing sources about TechTrend's lost clients and Sebastian's botched leadership. Buried in a paragraph was my name. Horizon Strategies, led by former TechTrend executive Sarah, has emerged as a key player in NextGen's new partnerships. I sipped my coffee, feeling the weight of my choices. I hadn't sought the spotlight, but I wouldn't shy from it either. My cousin called that evening. "They're panicking," she said. "Sebastian's pushing a retroactive non-compete. It's a bluff." I smiled, remembering the emails I'd saved, proof TechTrend never finalized my exit. I'd anticipated this. Weeks before my firing, I'd emailed HR, asking for clarity on my contract after Sebastian's title restructuring. No response. I followed up twice, CCing Sebastian, who replied, "I'll handle it." He hadn't. Those emails, timestamped and archived, were my armor. I forwarded them to my cousin and a corporate lawyer, Alina Voss, who confirmed TechTrend's legal threat was toothless. They'd crash in discovery, Alina said, her German accent clipped. But what do you want? I leaned back in my chair, Johannesburg's skyline glowing outside. I want their mistakes exposed. I want their investors to see what Sebastian's ego cost them. Natalie Price emailed next, requesting an off-record chat. We met in a discreet London pub, the kind where city bankers whispered deals over pints. I've got rumors, she said, her notebook closed but her eyes sharp. But your story's the fire. I laid it out, Sebastian's firing stunt, the missing paperwork, Tech Trend's client losses. I shared no secrets, just facts, backed by emails. This isn't revenge, I said. It's truth. Natalie nodded, scribbling. This'll shake the board. Days later, Martin Vogel, a Tech Trend board member who'd mentored me early on, called. He'd seen me grow from a nervous analyst to a strategist back when Tech Trend valued substance over flash. Singapore or Cape Town? He asked, his German accent warm but serious. Cape Town, I said. He sent a private jet. We met in a quiet seaside restaurant, waves crashing outside. You've outplayed them, he said, handing me a folder of Tech Trend's internal emails, including Sebastian's orders to bypass HR. The board's calling an ethics review. Will you testify? I nodded. No settlement, no NDA. Just the truth. Tech Trend's stock slid 6% after the Financial Times piece dropped, a subtle jab that rattled investors. Slack channels at Tech Trend went silent, with one post asking, "Where's Laura Hensley?" Sebastian's replacement, who'd fumbled NextGen's emails. Sebastian held frantic calls, his voice cracking in leaked recordings my ex-colleague sent. He blamed market headwinds, but clients weren't buying it. A Dutch firm canceled a meeting. An Australian client went dark. NextGen's legal team sent Tech Trend a 7-word reply. We're moving in a different direction. I worked from a Cape Town co-working space, my laptop open to Horizon Strategies' growing client list. A French startup offered equity for a consult. A German firm asked for an AI audit. Thandai's introductions fueled my momentum, her trust rooted in our shared climb from nothing. My mom's voice echoed in my head. Show them what you're made of. And it felt like breathing clean air for the first time in years. Sebastian's desperation peaked in a late-night email from Tech Trend's HR, offering a high 6-figure settlement for an NDA. I replied in 2 lines. I'm not here for money. See you at the review. I didn't CC anyone. I didn't need to. My grandfather had taught me timing was everything in a deal, and mine was coming. Cape Town's skyline sparkled as I sat in a glass-walled conference room, 50 stories above the city's pulse. Across from me, on a crisp video call, was NextGen's European expansion team, flanked by their legal and operations leads. Thandai joined from Johannesburg, her presence steady as ever. We're thrilled to finalize this, she said in Afrikaans, her smile rare but genuine. This deal's historic for us. The numbers were staggering, $600 million, 3 regions, multi-year, with Horizon Strategies leading strategic oversight. No middlemen, no Sebastian, just my team and me. My assistant slid a tablet beside me, showing a live graph of Tech Trend's stock plummeting 18%. A notification blinked. Sebastian placed on administrative leave. I tapped it closed, focusing on the contract before me. We'll start implementation next week, I said in Afrikaans, my voice calm. Direct lines, no bottlenecks. I paused, tilting my head. This time, we do it right. The team nodded, papers shuffling. Thandai read the final clause aloud, and I signed, my pen steady. Polite applause followed, and the call ended. I stayed seated, the room quiet, sunlight glinting off the table. For the first time, I felt not just relief, but truth, my truth. This journey started in a Manchester flat, where my mom's calloused hands taught me resilience, and my grandfather's stories gave me wings. I'd fought to belong in rooms like this, not by shouting but by listening, learning, and outlasting. Sebastian thought he could erase me, but he forgot I'd built the foundation he stood on. His firing stunt, his sloppy exit process, his ego, they handed me the keys to my freedom. Horizon Strategies wasn't just a firm, it was my declaration that I didn't need his permission to shine. Back in London, TechTrend's earnings call was a disaster. Analysts, armed with Natalie Price's exposé, tore through their spin. Implosion at TechTrend, the Financial Times had called it, detailing Sebastian's chaos and my quiet rise. Their stock halted trading by afternoon, and whispers of a board shakeup grew louder. Martin Vogel's call had set the stage, his folder of emails exposing Sebastian's overreach. The ethics review loomed, and I'd testify. Not for revenge, but to name the truth my mum and grandfather taught me to chase. I leaned back, Cape Town's energy humming below. My phone buzzed with a new client inquiry, a Berlin startup needing market entry help. I scheduled a call, then opened my calendar for the review. This wasn't a victory lap, it was a beginning. I'd built something real, not on flash or privilege, but on the grit I'd carried since childhood. To everyone who's followed this journey, thank you. You've walked with me through betrayal, resilience, and triumph. If my story stirred something in you, hit that subscribe button and join us, where every deal tells a tale of grit, truth, and new horizons. Keep carving your own path, and I'll see you in the next boardroom.